In the winter of 1897, Alaska's frozen frontier was not only shaped by gold, ambition, and survival, it was shaped by cruelty. In a small prison in Skagway, guards developed a pastime that blurred the line between punishment and entertainment. Their chosen method was not the noose, nor the bullet, but the cold itself. Inmates were left to freeze in the open air, and the spectacle was treated as sport. This is not a legend whispered in taverns. It was written, recorded, and remembered. The cold that defined Alaska's frontier became a weapon, and the ledger of the dead was marked not by accident, but by design. Before we open the first page of this ledger, remember to subscribe. Each story in this series reveals another hidden chapter of history tales that have lingered in shadow, waiting to be told. Like this video, share it with those who follow the strange and forgotten, and ring the bell so you never miss when another entry is read aloud. Skagway in 1897 was a town built on the movement of men chasing gold. Lawlessness was common, and order was difficult to maintain. To control theft, disputes, and violence, a territorial prison was erected on the edge of town. Constructed from heavy timber, surrounded by frostbitten hills, it became both a holding ground and a warning. Its cells were damp, its walls uninsulated, and the Arctic winds often cut through the cracks of the wood. The men confined there were not only hardened criminals. Many were prospectors who had fought over claims, drifters caught in the wrong fight, or debtors who could not pay. Some had sentences measured in days, others in years. The cold itself made survival within the cells a struggle. Frost crept over bedding. Water froze in tin cups. Guards, however, controlled stoves and blankets, ensuring warmth for themselves while inmates endured the extremes of the Alaskan night. The prison reflected the broader frontier justice, swift, harsh, and often arbitrary. Guards, drawn from drifters and ex-miners, held power unchecked. In the midst of the long Alaskan winter, with weeks of darkness and temperatures falling below -40 degrees, this authority became something more than order-keeping. It became opportunity. It began as a method of discipline. A prisoner who disobeyed was taken into the yard, forced to stand exposed to the cold, and left until his resistance broke. Over time, this developed into ritual. Guards began selecting prisoners, stripping them down, and chaining them against posts or along the walls of the yard. Whiskey wagers were made. Time was measured not in hours, but in the fading strength of the men outside. Survival varied. Some collapsed quickly, breath crystallizing in shallow gasps, skin turning rigid. Others endured longer, clinging to life while guards inside shouted encouragement, mocking endurance as though it were sport. The freezing was not silent. Cries carried across the wooden beams and into the streets of Skagway. Townsfolk reported hearing them, but claimed they could do little. The prison belonged to the guards, and intervention meant punishment. Records suggest the number of victims grew as the practice continued. Each storm, each drop in temperature, offered a new stage. The guards rationalized their actions as strength tests, survival contests, or even justice for lawbreakers. In reality, it became entertainment. The yard was a theater. The audience was armed men with keys. The players were prisoners with no chance of reprieve. By the end of 1897, the reputation of the Skagway prison had spread. Few spoke openly, but those who traveled north repeated the same warning. Survival of the cold was no longer only a matter of weather. It was a matter of whether or not the guard decided to turn the night into a game. Among the guards, a ledger was maintained. Unlike standard prison books, which documented sentences, releases, and rations, this ledger had a different form of record. Instead of names, lines were drawn. One mark for every man who collapsed before dawn. Some say it was kept by the warden himself, a man more interested in control than in law. The existence of this ledger was not officially recognized, but townspeople reported seeing it on his desk, pages blackened with lines. A merchant described it as a book of frozen debts. Miners called it the unholy ledger, claiming each stroke represented life lost not to justice, but to sport. No official copies remain, but fragments of testimony preserved in archives confirm that some system of keeping count existed. This practice blurred the function of prison. Punishment was no longer confined to sentencing or confinement. It became an event to be tallied, observed, and wagered upon. Guards found authority in both action and record. In an environment where isolation, darkness, and extreme weather already strained human endurance, this additional cruelty turned imprisonment into a sentence of slow erasure. By midwinter, rumors circulated that the number of marks had grown to dozens. Whether the true count was 20, 40, or more, no one can say with certainty. What is clear is that the ledger existed not as law, but as amusement. In an age of gold fever, when fortunes rose and fell overnight, human lives were reduced to scratches on paper, as if each death was only another statistic in the vast emptiness of Alaska. December of 1897 brought one of the harshest storms of the decade. Winds cut across Skagway, and snow buried paths waist deep. It was during this blizzard that the guards staged their largest event. Testimony suggests as many as 40 prisoners were dragged into the yard, shackled in chains, and left in the storm. The temperature fell below -50. By dawn, silence settled over the prison. Inside, guards marked the ledger with 40 strokes. Yet when townsfolk ventured near, they discovered something unexplained. The chains in the yard were empty. No bodies remained. The snow was disturbed, but tracks led nowhere. Some believe the corpses have been buried by drifts. Others claimed the storm carried them away. A few insisted the prisoners had risen and vanished into the wilderness. Whatever occurred, no remains were immediately recovered. Months later, fragments of bone and frozen cloth were found scattered miles from Skagway, but no full bodies. The mystery fed rumors that spread beyond Alaska, carried south by prospectors who left empty-handed of gold but full of stories. The event became known as the Night of 40 Chains. Whether the prisoners died together or scattered separately, the ledger marked them in silence. The prison continued its operations, but the atmosphere shifted. Guards spoke less openly of their games. The townspeople avoided the prison walls after dark, and yet the ledger grew. Its pages, marked by hand, remained as testimony to the night the storm erased 40 men. Weeks after the storm, guards began to vanish. Reports tell of their bodies discovered frozen in remote areas, chained or bound, though no explanation was provided for how such restraints could have appeared. Some dismissed it as coincidence. Others linked it directly to the vanished prisoners. The warden was last. His body was found in his office, hunched over the black ledger. The final entry, written in shaky strokes, read only, "The cold remembers." No official inquiry followed. The prison remained in use for a few years before its gradual abandonment. The ledger itself was never recovered. Some claimed it was burned with the prison timbers. Others argued it was hidden, buried beneath frost and stone. Today, little remains of the prison. Only fragments of foundation mark the ground where it once stood. Yet travelers to Skagway continue to report strange phenomena. The sound of chains rattling against wood, laughter carried by the wind, and, on certain nights, the impression of figures standing in rows, unmoving in the snow. The story of the prison guards and their games entered folklore, but the ledger, the supposed record of each death remains absent. Whether it existed as artifact or as rumor, its influence endures. It is remembered not as an official record of law, but as a list of cruelty disguised as order. The unholy ledger closes with a single reminder: survival in Alaska was never guaranteed. But in Skagway, in 1897, survival was not only lost to the wilderness, it was stolen by the men who commanded the keys. If you've walked with us through this account of Alaska's frozen prison, and you wish to uncover more entries from the unholy ledger, remember to subscribe. Each week, another chapter of forgotten history is opened, another story drawn from the margins of time. Leave a like if this tale kept you with us to the end, and share it so others may witness the past that refuses to stay buried. And if you wish to keep turning the pages with us, activate the bell so you never miss the next name written into the ledger.